If it weren't for a blue Volkswagen Jetta, I might not actually be here at all. We're not talking about this blue Volkswagen Jetta, we're talking about the blue 1982 Jetta that my dad was driving when he met the woman who later became his wife and my mom. And while a lot of things have changed since then, we've all grown up and moved on in a lot of ways, the basic principle of what the Jetta is really hasn't changed much at all since that 82 model year. This is Out Motorsports, the channel for cars as you are. My name is Jake, and I'm excited to tell you all about the latest evolution of this Jetta in particular, simply because of its roots back to my family's history. This is a 2023 Volkswagen Jetta GLI. This is the highest performance model of Jetta, and much like the Jetta has always been, it's based on the Golf. So let's talk all about what this is, kind of its roots in the rest of Volkswagen's model lineup, and especially the Golf. And because this is a GLI, we're going to talk about how it relates to the GTI, and then we'll talk all about how it is to drive. So first of all, let's just talk kind of what the Jetta is as a concept. So ever since the Jetta first came to be, it's been the same sort of thing, and that's to say it's a Golf with a bigger booty. It's a Golf with a trunk. So when Volkswagen first came to the United States, they brought over their Golf hatchback, which was very popular in Europe and other parts of the world, and you know, was fine enough here, but Americans didn't really warm up to hatchbacks, and we really never have. So hatchbacks are great, but a lot of people want something that's more sedan shaped, more traditional, and that's what the Jetta always has been. So Volkswagen, way back then, kind of took a Golf, cut off the hatchback part and welded a trunk to it and said, we'll call it a Jetta. So that is the concept of a Jetta, and it has stayed that way ever since. The current Jetta came out for 2018, then they facelifted it last year for 2022, and it is on the same platform. It's on that MQB platform as the Volkswagen Golf, which we now only get here in the United States as the Volkswagen GTI. Now, in the case of the Jetta itself, you can still get a basic Jetta that's, not the high-performance model, because it's just sort of Volkswagen's midsize sedan. It's a competitor for things like the Honda Civic, the Toyota Corolla, those sorts of vehicles. And of course, they sent over the high-performance model because we here like to drive. So the basic, more bare-bones Jettas are just sort of transportation. In this case, the GLI, since it first came out several generations ago at this point, has always been based on the GTI, which is the hot Golf. So what that means here is you've got the same EA 888 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder under the hood as you've had in recent generations of GTI. Here it makes 228 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. That is plenty healthy, and that routes down to the front wheels through a standard limited slip differential, love to see that, and your choice of transmissions. You've got either a standard 6-speed manual transmission or the excellent Volkswagen DSG dual clutch automatic. Now, so far, everything from about here forward is GTI. That is indeed the case. That also feels the same when we talk about the front suspension and frankly the rear shocks as well. So those are going to be adaptive units here. It's the DCC system, dynamic chassis control. That is a set of adaptive dampers on the Jetta GLI. Same as what you get on a higher end Mark 8 GTI if you go for that Autobahn trim level. Now I say Autobahn, and that does make a big difference here because the Jetta GLI is only available in one trim level. Obviously, sedans are not the most in favor right now. Crossovers are kind of all the rage again for a variety of reasons I don't always get, but the Jetta GLI is not available in, S, SE, and Autobahn like they've done the GTI for a while now. It's really just going to be that Autobahn trim level. Thank you for that, Dodge Charger, I'm sure. Anyway, this is just an Autobahn, which means you get everything fully loaded. There's no real options to pick other than your paint color. This is called Rising Blue. I think it's fantastic. You can have this or a red or some shades of white and gray and black or whatever. But the blue is fantastic. You've only got one interior color, which is this black and red deal going on. But back to the mechanicals of this thing as we move more toward the rear of the car. So when you go to the rear of the car, the rear suspension on the GLI is going to be different from a regular Jetta. The regular Jetta gets a twist beam suspension, which is really not all bad in a lot of cases for the sake of just being kind of more of an appliance, and that's totally fine. But For the GLI in particular, Volkswagen did use a multi-link independent rear suspension setup, so love that. And then making this all stop is effectively the Mark 7.5 Golf R brakes. So you've got a 13.4-inch brake rotor on the front and an 11.8-inch brake rotor on the rear. Now, I mentioned that Autobahn trim level, again, is important because it means these are all loaded. It means they have all the goodies built into them. So that interior is also going to be fairly well equipped for what this car is. So you've got that black leatherette upholstery going on inside. Those seats are indeed heated. You've got a Beats audio sound system. That's kind of the premium sound system in this car. Other Volkswagens are using differently branded systems, but that's going to be the premium setup here. You do have wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. You've got the digital cockpit, digital gauge cluster. You've got ambient lighting going on with a bunch of different colors you can pick from. And you've got Volkswagen's IQ Drive system, which is kind of all other driving assistance technology. And it's got what they call Travel Assist, which is basically, you know, the hands-on level 2 driving assistance stuff. So you've got lane centering, you've got radar cruise control, and some other technology that kind of helps with all that. But it's a good highway sort of driving assistance tech. Now, the nice thing with IQ Drive is that Volkswagen has figured out how to make it work with a manual transmission, which is something that not all sports sedan manufacturers have been able to do lately. I'm looking at Subaru and the WRX in particular, although I think they are working to evolve that anyway. But with the Volkswagen here, it does work, and it works fairly well. But of course, I'm here to talk about how this thing is to drive when you're driving it, not letting the computers handle most of the work. So let's get behind the wheel and talk about this thing. Now, before we do, I want to mention one other thing, and that is price, because as I said, there's not a ton of competition going on in the sedan segment in general, especially not in this kind of compact-y mid-size sports sedan segment. So I want you to keep this price in mind while we're talking about the driving experience and kind of everything else going on in the car. $32,680. That is what this one costs. This one has the 6-speed manual transmission. The DSG only adds a little bit of money. It's like $800. And then there is a little bit of an upcharge to have this blue paint over like black. But in any case, this is going to be more or less your price unless you want the DSG. Like I said, there's really no other options going on. So keep that in mind, because we have to also think about the competition here. All right, let's talk about driving the 2023 GLI. So first of all, we'll start with acceleration and handling, because that is currently what I am doing here. And this car is plenty quick. It makes nice power all the way up to the red line. The downside of that, though, given how turbo motors work, this one has a little bit of turbo lag going on toward the lower end of the rev range. So not a big deal, but if you are driving it for economy, you need to pull it out of 6th gear or 5th gear to really get some passing power going on. If you're on a back road or something, it's totally fine. Just keep it in 2nd, 3rd, 4th. But you do have to be shifting quite a bit, and it does feel like you end up being fairly busy with the shifter some of the time if you're in kind of traffic that gets flowing and then stops, and as it kind of does in the DC area and a lot of other big cities. Now, talking about the shifter and the clutch in particular, I think the clutch is good. It's not too heavy, not too light. It feels pretty good. It is a long throw. So the engagement point is kind of midway down. You don't have to push it all the way down really to fully disengage it, but it's fine in traffic. It just feels like you're doing a lot with your left leg, and that combines with a shifter that I think is fairly ropey in a certain way. So between your left leg and your right arm, there's just kind of a lot of motion going on. There's a lot of length to all of your movements, and the entire experience is fine, but it could be tightened up, and I think it would work better. Now, ride quality is very good. You've got the adaptive shocks based on your drive mode here. You can put things back to comfort or back to sport, and it will be, you know, softer or stiffer based on your preferences there. I think in comfort it rides really well. It's great in the city. It's great on the highway. Sport does stiffen things up, but it's not super stiff. The whole car feels a little bit softer overall, not just suspension-wise, but in general, it feels a little softer than a GTI. And then it's got a longer wheelbase going on too. The car is a little bit bigger. It feels soft, but not necessarily playful. The GTI, the hatchback, feels playful. And this, to me, just feels a little bit kind of big and soft and a little heavy in certain ways. It's about 3,300 pounds. It's not the heaviest car in the world. So it is, you know, light enough on its feet, but it just doesn't encourage you to really get it hustling necessarily. So it's an interesting car to drive. Steering wise, the steering is one of my more likable aspects of the car. The steering wheel itself is great. I love the kind of perforated leather in the middle, nice and thick, and then it does give you decent feedback through the wheel, and it, you know, gets a little heavier in sport mode, that sort of thing. So I like the steering just fine. I like the car enough just fine, but then there's a ton of little nits to pick, and that's where this all kind of falls apart for me. So in my case, I'm not comfortable in this car. Usually I would say Volkswagens and German cars in general are built well for tall people, and in this case I find that the seat sits too high up on the base for someone my height. I can't lower it enough to be really comfortable. I feel like my head's really close to the roof, and it is. I've got, you know, maybe an inch, maybe half an inch right here above my head, and then not a ton of support with the side bolsters. I'm surprised there's not more going on here. It's okay on the sides, but on the thigh cushion, when you're in more of a spirited driving environment, which I'm not right now, it does get a little, you kind of move around in the seat quite a bit. There's nothing you can really do about it. You've just got lumbar as your only adjustment. And then the third piece of just how I fit in the car, this center console, which holds tons of buttons and knobs, which I love. Volkswagen, please go back to something like this on the GTI. This is fantastic. However, it's canted toward the driver, and this side of it, this plastic side piece, flares out. And the entire time I've been driving this car, you can see my right knee is just pressed up against this, and that's just where it has to go for my right foot to be on the throttle pedal. It's not fantastic. Everything about this feels like I just sort of don't fit everywhere. So kind of irritating in that regard. As far as other stuff going on for drivability, visibility is good. The dash is nice and low. You've got an infotainment screen, of course, but it's down nice and low. You've got a real volume knob that is indeed backlit at night. All the controls around it are backlit at night. You do have this silly all-touch steering wheel with haptics, which hopefully they're going to go back to real buttons like they said they would on the GTI, because this, they acknowledged, was a big misstep. And then the digital cockpit cluster also works pretty well. You can pick several different views there. Your belt lines are nice and low. Everything is pretty good. The issue I have is that this car doesn't exist in a bubble. This is all good if you just want a VW and you want a VW sedan with a stick shift. Back when this first came out, this car, like I said, first came out for 2018, this generation of it, and then they did a facelift in 2022. Competition, if you really think like Honda Civic Si, Subaru WRX, Corolla, I guess, although there's not really a hot Corolla at the time, there wasn't. Those were all ready for updates as well, and this at the time felt a little more premium, it was a little more interesting, you know, whatever. The biggest competition that this car faces is the Honda Civic Si and the Acura Integra A-Spec. And the Civic is going to come across cheaper. It's going to be sub 30 grand. And then the Integra A-Spec with a 6-speed in both cases, the Integra will end up being like 35, 36. So this splits the difference. And the issue is that both the Honda and the Acura are more direct, more connected feeling, more engaging, more fun, more playful. So all of that on top of the fact that as a tall person, I think I fit in them better. Everything about them fits me and my personality and my preferences better. I've had a really hard time grappling with this car when I know that those are out there. Now, all that to say, this is getting up in years. I'm sure there's another one in the works. I hope there's another one in the works. And I'm sure VW will be updating this at some point. It is by no means a bad car right now. It is plenty fun. It's a little on the soft side, like I said, but if you're a diehard VW person, if you're a diehard German car person, if you want a GTI, but you really want a trunk for some reason instead of a hatchback, all valid reasons to consider this car. And I don't think it's going to be a disappointment for anybody, but I don't think this is the biggest standout among its class at this point, and it's a lot of little things that all add up to where it makes me feel like it's just ready for a little bit of tightening up, a little nip and tuck everywhere, and I think with that, it will all come across a little bit more competitive as they move forward. All right, that is it for this review of the 2023 Volkswagen Jetta GLI with 6-speed manual. As always, thank you so much for coming along. Please be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe right here on YouTube. Give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Out Motorsports. If you'd like to connect with fellow LGBT automotive enthusiasts and motorsports competitors, head over to outmotorsports.com. We have a whole group over there that would love to get to know you online and in person at some of our events coming up around the country throughout this year and into early next. Until next time, please stay safe, be well. See you again soon.